Number 5, they want us to find the slope, the distance, and the midpoint between the point -2.5 and the point -6.9. So the slope is the steepness. How steep is this guy going from one point to the other? Well, if you remember slope, which we use an M to represent that, it's your rise over your run. But I don't have a picture here. So it's rise over run, which remember your rise going up, that's your rise. That's simply the change in your Y values. That's your height because your Y's are telling you your height. This guy's at 5, that guy goes to 9. I can see it went up 4 over the change in my X's, how much it moved over left or right. So I got to subtract my Y's. So I'm going to go 9 minus 5. Since I subtracted in that direction, I now must subtract that way so that I don't lose a negative sign. So -6 minus -2. The minus changes to plus. So I end up with 4 on top. -6 plus 2 is -4. We have a -1 slope. It goes up 1 to the left 1, up 1 to the left 1. So there's our slope. The distance between these points, okay. The distance, well, here's one point, here's another. We're looking for that line. Well, right here, we're going to form a right triangle. Use the Pythagorean theorem. Now, with this leg here, that's your horizontal. That's the change between where you were here and here. That's the change in your X values. Going up, well, we're looking from here to here. That's the change in my Y values. And the Pythagorean theorem states this leg squared plus that leg squared equals C squared. So we know the distance is the change in my X value squared, plus the other leg is the change in my Y value squared. I'm going to add them together, but then to get C by itself, I got to take the what? Square root. And that's the distance formula there. So, change my X's. Well, let's see. -2 to -6. How far apart are they? They are 4 apart. You could just subtract them. -2 minus -6 will give you a 4, or -6 minus -2 gives you -4, but distance is always positive, so we're just using a positive 4 here. But also a -4 times -4 is going to give you 16 anyway. Changing my Y's, 5 to 9. 4 also, 4 squared. So 16 and 16, that's going to give us a square root of 32. I don't have a calculator on me right now. Square root of 32, I know 5 times 5 is 25, 6 times 6, 36. So it's between 5 and 6. I'm going to take a wild guess and say 5.7. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's closer to 5.8. Maybe I'm off. I don't know. You do it. Square root of 32 is the distance. The midpoint. Well, how do we find the middle of anything? How do I find the middle of 2 grades? If I made a 70 on a test and an 80, I add them together and divide by 2. Well, that's how we're going to find the middle of our X's and the middle of our Y's. We're going to add our X's, X1 and X2 together, divide by 2, and we're going to add the 2 Y values together and divide by 2. So our X's are -2 plus -6, -2 plus -6 divided by 2, -2 plus -6, -8, -8 divided by 2, -4. The middle of my X's is -4. The middle of my Y's, 5 and 9. I can see it's 7, but let's see, 5 plus 9 divided by 2. That's 14 divided by 2. Yes, it is 7, which I can see 7's in the middle of 5 and 9, so it makes sense. So there's our midpoint for those 2 points.